We're making a film for Nick.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Cool. What, just about the market or the...
No, it's about the story behind the market. Yeah.
It's kind of odd. I suppose I've been waiting for some form of rebellion. For a long time, I thought the moment might exist in 2008 when I turned on Radio 4 and Lehman Brothers had collapsed. And I thought, there's the moment that capitalism has imploded on itself, and there's the opportunity to reinvent the way in which capital works. And it didn't happen. All that happened in the aftermath of the collapse of 2007, 2008 was that we spent 10 years rebuilding and trying to recreate that which had existed previously. The opportunities have existed for us to take, and I don't believe that they have been properly taken. You have to forge your own slender part of that narrative and hope that people understand a little bit about what that is, why that is, and the significance that it holds. Atlas Bar was an opportunity that we took to try to participate in that post-punk movement in Manchester. I was working as a consultant in the property industry at the time and mates with a few architects. And Ian Simpson was one of those architects and his partner Rachel Huff. And normally we would be giving people advice and advising them to do something. And we decided that actually, rather than advise somebody, let's do something ourselves. I'd sat in Café Costa in Paris in front of Beaubourg, which had been designed by Philippe Stark, and thought, fucking hell, this is pretty culturally satisfying. And wanted to bring a little bit of that back to my home city, which was Manchester. And so the opportunity existed for us to do something that was referential, but also was very much part of Manchester. So Atlas was our manifestation and our participation in all of that. And at that time, there were few kind of bars, I suppose. There were lots of pubs, but there weren't many bars. There was Dry Bar had opened on Oldham Street. Carol had done her thing with Manto in the Village, which was a very close homage to Dry Bar. Jim Ramsbottom had opened Duke's 92 in Castlefield, and we kind of were slotting ourselves into that. The great thing about that was it slotted in seamlessly, and it became, I suppose, what we wanted it to become, which was this kind of canteen for a lot of the creative spirit that was happening in the city at that moment in time. The delight for us was that that was our kind of, the start of my relationship with the factory record story, because Atlas was Rob Gretton's favourite bar, and I describe Atlas on a Friday night as the moment that Manchester's vigorous imagination was captured, where you would go on a Friday night and you would be able to have those conversations, those exchanges, those ideas with people who had led that cultural charge in the immediate aftermath of the Sex Pistols gig and the whole punk thing.
I am an antichrist.
all I remember was this helicopter hovering over the city centre, and then this plume of detritus that was kind of floating down. And so what happened was the bomb had gone off clearly just as I'd hit the Mancunian Way, and I was driving over there and thinking, what's going on? And by the time I'd pulled into the northern quarter off the Mancunian Way, there were people walking, just leaving town with blood all over their faces. All the windows from loads of the buildings had just fallen into the street. And there was this shockwave, you know. I couldn't really make an awful lot of sense of it at that moment in time. They saw this as an opportunity for reinvention, and that's what the city's always done. And I think they started to do some things that were really significant, and they were the right things in terms of replanning the way in which the city centre worked. One of the things that they didn't do quite so well was to recruit what was then McCann Erickson, the advertising agency based in Wilmslow, to come up with a logo and a strapline for the city in the aftermath of this catastrophic moment. So more or less 12 months to the day, they invited 600 of the great and the good of Manchester to the Bridgewater Hall for the unveiling of this. Well, we didn't know what it was. We were just invited to this event. And as the curtains were drawn back on this badge, I couldn't quite work out what it was. And it said, "We're up and going." And I looked at that and thought, really? You know, this is the best that this city that had come up with all of this rich contemporary cultural history can come up with. I was appalled. I was frozen on the spot. And then one of the things that flashed up with the endorsements, and one of them was from Tony Wilson. So Tony Wilson was endorsing this and saying, you know, it's a great representation for youth culture in the city. And I thought, that's wrong with that. And I walked out, and the first thing I did was pick up the phone and ring Tony Wilson. I said, what the fuck are you doing? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I said, endorsing this thing that we've just been to. I don't know what you're talking about. I've got no idea what you're talking about. I said, meet me in Atlas. So he said, right, I'll see you there, 11 o'clock. So I met him, and he was like, I don't know anything about it. Honestly, I don't know anything about it. And gradually, by 12 o'clock, he and I were having a coffee at 11 o'clock. By 12 o'clock, there were about 12 people sat around this table, all of whom had been to this event at Bridgewater Hall, all of whom had come out kind of shell-shocked. And we decided that we needed to do something about it. We couldn't just sit there and moan about it, that we had to do something that made people aware that it wasn't good enough for our city. I wanted Made in Manchester because I thought that a little bit like when you pick up a knife that says Made in Sheffield. It was a celebration of the craftsmanship of a place. Tony Wilson wanted to delve into the significant history of the city and said it should be revolutions. The theme should be revolutions. So rather than us have a shin-kicking competition about who won, we put the two things together. So we had revolutions made in Manchester. And we kicked up a right stink, frankly. And it had the impact of bringing about the downfall of Marketing Manchester, the agency that had procured this. Because at that point in time, the city were savvy enough, had the capacity to be self-critical enough to understand that it wasn't good enough. And they needed to do something about it. So that was a significant moment in time along this story timeline. How this all came about is that in the aftermath of Urban Splash, problems that Urban Splash encountered in the 2007, 2008 financial recession. And the fact that still wasn't corrected by 2012 gave me some space to think about what all this meant and where this was all headed. And I think what we realised was that we had lost that passion, that energy. We'd been absorbed into the establishment, we were getting older, and you can't halve your age, but you can start to work with people who are half your age. And you can facilitate, you can use your experience to encourage and facilitate and allow people to be incredibly creative. And you can start to take some of the weight off them that they shouldn't and don't have to deal with, dealing with local authorities, dealing with issues to do with planning, dealing to do with landlords, to do with all of the complexities that you need to trudge through to exist in any given situation. We take all of that away from these guys and we make their lives a little bit easier, because having set up a bar in Manchester in the 1990s, had somebody come along to me and Jen and said, we're going to make your life a little bit easier, we would have latched onto them and we would have walked with them wherever they took us, because what you realise is that people persistently put hurdles in front of you. No matter what you're doing, people will try and stop you doing what you want to do. And this was our attempt to take all of that out of the way. Don't worry about them, we'll sort them out. You just do what you're doing to the best of your ability. Design didn't matter. It's people that make places. And that was a complete run against everything that I'd stood for previously. And this was all part of challenging myself to leave the safety net of where I was and feel scared again. Because actually when you feel scared, you start to do things in a very different way than when you feel very complacent about things. At that point in time, I was introduced to the then leader of the council, Matt College, and he said, you know, I want to reinvigorate the town, and I'm being introduced to you because of what you've been involved in the past decade. And I had a conversation with him across the road in the town hall one January morning, and I said to him, Matt, Altrincham has lost its reason for its existence, and the reason it exists is it's a market town. It's had its market charter since 1290. It needs to reinvent itself around the market. I had no idea at that point that I would be involved in delivering that transformation, but I knew that it had to rediscover the reason for its existence. And I said, you need to reinvent the market, because at that point in time, the council had run the market since forever. And in the past 30 years, it had gone down from 30 people working here, setting up the market, 300 traders, setting up a bustling, thriving market, down to a trickle of 8 or 10 traders, 2 people, Paul and Brian, and it was a pale imitation of what it formerly was. And I said that it needed, I said to Matt, it needs to be reinvented, and it needs to be a modern market, and Altrincham needs to be the modern market town, the being a very important component part of that. And Matt was like, it was an epiphany for him. It was like suddenly, there's the missing piece of the jigsaw. I think, you know, when you look back at pictures of this place when we took over, and it had the council specification non-slip red floor, and it's a listed building, and it had roller shutters put up on the fronts of the units, and it was making no contribution to the town culturally or financially, and it had enormous potential in our eyes. When we took over in September of 2013, which was the first market that we ran, it was a difficult time because we were blending the old with the new. So we were bringing in new traders. We were only trading outside at that point in time in the covered market. So Market House is still to become what it subsequently became, but we didn't know quite what at that point in time. So we were just running the outside market, and we had a series of people that were coming in as weekend traders alongside some of the trad traders that stood on a Tuesday on a Friday and on a Saturday. And there was inevitably friction between the two in that period because inevitably there were some of the traders that could see that they didn't have a position in the story moving forward. They were important looking back, but they could see that they weren't part of the new people that were moving in. So there was a difficulty, and the problem for me was that at that moment the market was making no contribution to the town, either culturally, creatively, or economically, and consequently it had everything to play for. If it could deliver those three elements, if it could be reinvented, reimagined to deliver those kind of outputs, then in my mind that was capable of having a profound impact, an impact that would result in transformational change. And this was an attempt to deliver that by curating people and doing it for less than £1 million. When we opened Market House in the September of 2014, I wanted to be able to demonstrate how we had delivered transformational change by curating people for very little capital outlay. We started to deliver a rewarding experience that people told their mates about. There was no fanfare, there was no PR. We simply opened the doors and we started to get busier, and it started to become more difficult for people to get a seat in Market House. And suddenly that starts to attract attention from all kinds of people. And Jen is the person who makes those judgments so accurately about who is good at what they do and whether they have a passion, whether they have the right temperament to work in a collegiate way.
Market House was just straight away, everyone loved that, and it really felt great, but that wasn't the vision. Market House wasn't the vision, the market was the thing that we were trying to get going again. Nick and I aren't very good at following instructions or rules, neither of us. It's just impossible to, and we always try and work out how to make something work or how to try and make something happen. If someone says this is the way you do something, the first question both of us always ask is why. Embrace change and see it as a positive thing, and also not to be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are really positive, I think. You always learn something from a mistake, and as long as you're not afraid of being making a fool of yourself, then you're going to learn from it and you're going to move on and you're going to do something even better.
Go around now on a Saturday afternoon and you can see full well, there's so many other places that opened up off the back of the success of it, which is great. Again, it's sort of turned into a real foodie destination.
I think from what it was to what it is now, I feel like there's a lot of that is due to Nick and Jen and kind of what they've done with the community here.
Yeah, completely. I mean, from when we first started coming, it wasn't a complete ghost town, but it was hard to imagine kind of like what it would become. There was a lot of empty shops. So I suppose over the course of those last few years, we've seen other sort of independent businesses popping up, and then you know that if you come down on us even if the sun's not out, there's piles of people kind of out eating and drinking and enjoying this part of Altrincham.
It's a combination of people here and the actual market itself. This place holds energy. You go into the hall, you're not just in another ordinary hall. You feel like you're walking around a bit of a historic building.
Genuinely, like, without the market, we wouldn't, like, personally, I'd definitely wouldn't be able to afford my own house. What the market's done for me, but then I think that's looking at it selfishly. If you look around at the opportunities that it's given to people and the jobs it's created, the platform it's provided for so many people, not just that have businesses within here, but like the inspiration that staff get who come and work in the different kitchens or whatever, they then go off and do their own businesses, whether it's in the market or outside of the market. I feel like there's such a domino effect of inspiration, I suppose, really.
I remember coming here when I used to deal with a shop across the road, and it was dead. It was a ghost town. What Nick and Jen have done here, you've got to doff your cap. It's unbelievable. It really is. Wow, I love it here. No need to go anywhere else.
Within the first 9 months of us opening here, people from the restaurant industry were coming down, wondering why the hell we were as busy as we were. And then people from the world of regeneration were coming. Local authorities, not only from local authorities in the UK, but European local authorities were starting to come and look at this because of the impact that it was starting to have on a place that had really struggled. I think the complaint that you hear from people who are local now is that they don't come in here at the weekend because it's too busy. That doesn't always apply, but I suppose that we have become incredibly busy and perceived as being incredibly successful, delightfully. You know, that's allowed us to spread out and to involve more people. So Newmarket Square, which is parallel to here, we've been able to accommodate businesses that have fractured out of businesses. So Reuben's, for example, down in Newmarket Square, he started his career working for Matt at Tender Cow. Businesses that we have nurtured and we want to find a home for because they're really good and we don't want to let them go. So we're able to flush through and hopefully retain talent, not only here but in our other two locations at Mackimere and Picturedrome. Even though we're becoming much busier year on year, this place has managed to hold on to its charm, and we've recognised that it is as much about the imperfections and the things that don't work about this space that make it endearing and make it charming as the things that do work. Again, that's an essential part of the curation, is to allow that chaos and just carefully control it. It's something that Peter Saville said to me, which is that the place in which you live is a reflection of the people. And I realised that it's people that make places. And therefore, what Altrincham wasn't a reflection of the people who lived around here. The town itself was not a reflection of those people. And so what was necessary in my mind was the need to curate people, the activity of people, to create an experience. In the back of my mind, that was really what I desperately wanted this to be about, was a demonstration. This is still regeneration. This is about effecting transformational change in a place that happens to be my town, using people and not property to effect that change. And I think that gradually, bit by bit, we've achieved all of those objectives. This is a delightful place just to be at an entirely superficial level, but it's also my reward is the effect that this has had on the perception of this town, that places it now centre stage in terms of the best place to live in the UK, as voted by the Sunday Times, and that all local authorities around the country are trying to replicate, are trying to emulate, because now everybody wants one of these. And what they perhaps don't understand is the journey that we've gone down to get where we are right now.